Greetings. Today I'm going to share with you the poetry of Dorothy Wordsworth. Now, you may know about Dorothy Wordsworth from your studies of the Romantic period, which was around 1790 to 1850 in England when it came to literature. You may be aware that Dorothy also had a brother who was a writer, a William. Now, the interesting thing about what I'm reading to you today is the idea of calling it poetry. Because, in fact, this book, which I'm going to be reading from today, it's called The Poetry of Dorothy Wordsworth. But, in fact, the editor here, Hyman Eigerman, this was published, by the way, by Columbia University Press, 1940, writes in his preface that this poetry is essentially taken from pieces of Dorothy Wordsworth's journal. In the journal, they were not written as poetry. What he did was he essentially just took selections of writing from her journal, arranged them into with line breaks, and numbered them into poems. Now, some people would not consider that poetry. I think the results are very poetic. Part of the reason that that's the case is my affinity for haiku, which is by nature sensual in the sense that it focuses on the senses, hearing, seeing, touch, and doesn't so much focus or really excludes figurative language like metaphor and simile. Similarly, Dorothy Wordsworth's poetry here is almost completely imagistic, leaving it relatively bare of ornament. And I find that very appealing. And I'm going to read you, I think, something like 5 poems or something. And you'll see immediately what I mean about it being bare of ornament. Now, hopefully you like it as much as I do. So here's some poetry of Dorothy Wordsworth. The moon shone like herrings in the water. The moon shone like herrings in the water. The hills and the stars and the white waters with their ever-varying yet ceaseless sound. The snow still lies upon the ground. Just at the closing in of the day, I heard a cart pass the door, and at the same time, the dismal sound of a crying infant. I went to the window, and had light enough to see that a man was driving a cart, which seemed not very full. A woman with an infant in her arms was following close behind, and a dog close to her. It was a wild and melancholy night. He said he had been a soldier, that his wife and children had died in Jamaica. He had a beggar's wallet over his shoulders, and a coat of shreds and patches. And though his body was bent, he was tall, and had the look of one used to have been upright. I talked a while, and then I gave him a piece of cold bacon and a penny. And the final poem. When I saw this lowly building in the waters, among the dark and lofty hills, with that bright soft light upon it, it made me more than half a poet. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time with more poems.